Okay, issue 3, our potpourri. Peace and Taliban and Supreme Court of the United States. Oh my.
There hasn't been a moment like this. We've had very successful negotiations. We think they'll be successful in the end. The other side's tired of war. Everybody's tired of war.
Evincing the truth that words are easier than actions, the Taliban this week undermined the US Taliban peace deal they had signed just last weekend, launching more than 100 attacks on Afghan forces across the country. The US Air Force responded by supporting government forces with airstrikes. But the Taliban have also refused to do something else, something Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said they had committed to doing, rejecting al-Qaeda. Continuing our potpourri with some more news, this week saw Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer warn 2 conservative Supreme Court justices that they would not, quote, know what hit you, unquote, if they ruled on upcoming cases against Schumer's wishes. Those words earned a rare rebuke from Chief Justice John Roberts. And on Friday, Schumer said he regretted his earlier choice of words.
Yeah, Clarence, if we look at these 2 big issues, and let's start with Afghanistan, do you believe that the Taliban peace deal is worth the paper it's written on?
Well, I think it's worth something, but it seems like more of a negotiating point than the conclusion, because the issue of the prisoner release that the Taliban want is something that in itself is worth years of negotiating.
Right.
And that's a real sticking point of the sort that we have. This reminds me of when the Mujahideen were running things, what preceded the Taliban, and the United States pulled out too quickly, I think, and this led to the formation of the Taliban and the mess we have now, and Al-Qaeda and 9/11 perhaps, and that's where we stand right now. Really, the country outside of Kabul is really run by warlords still. It's still basically a tribal society, and we just have a long way to go before we can get that negotiating point.
I think the Taliban and the Americans are cutting a deal. The Taliban want the Americans and their firepower out of there. We've got a deal to leave in 14 months, and the Taliban want their prisoners and want us gone. There are 5,000 prisoners that we've agreed to have released, but the Afghan government sees those 5,000 prisoners as its card. It wants to negotiate with the Taliban, but the Taliban have been attacking basically Afghan units. In other words, they don't have any truce with them. So I think the whole thing is just about to collapse. But this is really, you got 12,000 people in there. I think the President of the United States and his Secretary of State want our guys out and home, and they're willing to take the consequences of a pullout, which are not going to be good.
Okay, Helen.
Well, it's not peace with honor. It's not even peace. This is to fulfill a campaign promise to pull out of this country, and I'm sympathetic with that. I think after 19 years, we've kind of exhausted whatever possibilities we had there. But this is not any kind of a victory, and this could really be condemning the country to the kind of lawlessness that we at least tried to put somewhat of a lid on. But on Tuesday, the president actually talked to the Taliban leader. This is the first time ever. To what end, I don't know, because on Wednesday, U.S. forces then attacked the Taliban because they had been attacking government forces. So this may be an end, but this is not an end that you can claim has any honor to it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
There's a reason that this hasn't happened for years and years and years, and I think the fact that there's been any progress, however significant it turns out to be, speaks to the fact that the Trump administration and the president himself did make this a central component of his campaign and really wants to make good on it. But I think what we're seeing right now is they're running into the same roadblocks as everybody who came before him, and that's ultimately what's in the immediate future, I think, for this negotiation period.
Okay, before we go on, my little tidbit on this, I think if you look at Afghanistan, the degree of the ethnic separation from the Pashtuns, which is the base of the Taliban, or sort of base of the Taliban, the policy that we had of supporting the government in terms of training, aviation, intelligence, logistics, building up their more elite infantry forces, and actually really just doing a lot of training and holding cities instead of patrolling through Helmand, which we once did, that was working. We weren't taking casualties. I think sometimes we think that it's the war of 2009 to 13 versus the complete pullout. So hopefully the Trump administration will recognize the exigency that if you have a Taliban that is unwilling to disavow al-Qaeda, you got to keep in the game. Okay, let's move on to the other issue. Pat, the Supreme Court. Chuck Schumer's comments, obviously President Trump has made some negative comments about Supreme Court justices. But Chuck Schumer was the man this week. How do you see it? How do you see the fallout?
Well, what Schumer did was basically a threat to the Supreme Court. The whirlwind, if you've reaped the whirlwind, now it's coming. You're going to pay for it. You're going to regret doing what you did. And he listed the two justices that he was talking about, the
Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, yeah.
Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. And so I think even Schumer realizes he went too far. I think that the Republicans, frankly, they made the case that Schumer's threat has to be withdrawn and he's got to apologize. I think he should, but I don't think they should go around and try to censure Schumer.
Okay.
Well, I think Schumer did apologize on the Senate
He
floor.
sort of apologized. It wasn't explicit.
Yeah, but he made the point that he wasn't threatening physical harm, that he was predicting a political backlash. Because what he's talking about is the Louisiana abortion case that's before the court. And the court, just 2 years ago, when Justice Kennedy was on the court, ruled 5-4 that requiring abortion clinics to have admitting privileges at hospitals would create an undue burden and was therefore unconstitutional by the court's previous test. Louisiana has the identical case now, and the court took it, because there are 2 new justices on the court, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch. And so the widespread expectation is that they will uphold the Louisiana law, which will basically be a gut punch to Roe v. Wade. And that's a big development, especially in an election year. And that's what Schumer was talking about. His choice of words was terrible.
What it reminded me of is what my colleague Molly Hemingway reported shortly after Kavanaugh was confirmed to the Supreme Court, which was that there were serious conversations among Democrats about impeaching Kavanaugh. And Chuck Schumer talking about that, I don't think he was threatening any physical harm, but I think he was talking about political consequences. And I think it speaks to the fact that we've entered a very polarized era in the courts in a way that maybe we haven't before. And that there are threats to the way that we've always seen the court that didn't exist previously. I think he was right to apologize. But I think that's what this speaks to.
Pat is itching at the bit here, so
I seem to remember Gerald Ford back there as leader of the Republicans trying to impeach Wild Bill Douglas.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. But look, there's nothing wrong. Look, we grew up in the conservative movement with, impeach Earl Warren was a motto of all the kids in school,
The cool kids, at least.
But there's nothing wrong with criticizing court decisions because justices have assumed the role of black-robed legislators for the last 60 years. Problem with Schumer was it was a threat.
Okay, Clarence.
You probably didn't like Marbury v. Madison either, did you? I mean, the whole idea of judicial review goes back to
well, it was a usurpation of power.
It is the province of the judiciary to say what the law is.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
But
Lincoln,
Pat's right about
ask Lincoln what he thought of that. He says the guy that if you give the court that power, that makes the court supreme over the other branches of government.
And what about Andrew Jackson? Enforce it.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Clarence, sorry, I interrupted. I got it carried away.
No, that's okay. Pat actually brought up Earl Warren, which I remember very well indeed. Back in my aimless youth, I joined the Impeach Earl Warren movement too. It was a dalliance, but illuminating.
But going back to this exigent point, Clarence, President Trump has made these comments about the judiciary, attacking various judges as well, and was quite interesting on Fox News with Brett Baier did a town hall with the president this week, and President Trump, he was asked by Brett Baier, you have said some pretty tough stuff about the judiciary. Do you want to pare that back? And the president was pretty insistent that he did not want to pare himself back.
No, and I think this is one thing about President Trump. He's consistent on these things from the very beginning. I mean, look at autocracies around the planet and through history. One of the first things they do after taking over the government is to take over the courts, and if they can control the media and all. And so Trump is at every turn, all this deep state talk is all about the imperial judiciary. And I find it to be dangerous on that level, otherwise quite amusing.
Right. Well, the president has said that Justices Ginsburg and Sotomayor should recuse themselves from any rulings having to do with him or his administration because they've been critical of him in their public statements, and that's not going anywhere. And so he's drawing the line at physical harm. That isn't what Schumer meant. Again, he those were the wrong words, but he is saying that if there is this gut punch to Roe v. Wade, there's going to be significant political fallout, probably on both sides.
Right.
When
Emily,
you say political fallout, what do you mean when you say they're going to pay for it? That's what Schumer said.
At the
These
ballot
two guys
box,
are going.
At the ballot
They're not
box,
on the ballot.
At the ballot box. No, they're not. But the Republican Party
Why
is.
didn't he threaten Trump?
Well, that's what, it was
Because
a bad
Trump
statement.
appointed him.
all right. Let's not get in the weeds on this. Emily, on the abortion issue as well, Emily, speaks eloquently how much that matters on the left. On the right as well. It remains an incredibly powerful mobilizing force.
Oh, and I think increasingly so. And it's always been important to the right, but when you see it, the pro-life movement has been so galvanized by having Donald Trump in office, and they've also been galvanized on the state level and on the local level in the past 10 years. That happened really over the course of the Obama administration. And so yes, this issue obviously for decades has been so important to the conservative movement, but there's a real, everyone feels like they have the wind at their back in the pro-life movement right now.
Roe v. Wade is.
I'll let you finish.
Roe v. Wade is popular. It polls in the high 60s. So we're talking about making abortion illegal, basically, and not everybody on the right agrees with that either.
Well, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're talking about if Roe v. Wade is overturned, it would simply go back to the states and be decided legislatively. But there's no doubt about it. Conservative judges on the Supreme Court is a winning issue for Republicans and conservatives in the fall election. If Biden is running, he's not going to go out and say, we're going to name liberal judges who will do the following. I don't think he's going to run on that. The conservatives have to whip in.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
You may have control again.
Thank you.